Sprocket, old boy, what are you barking at? What do you see?
Nerds.
Nerds.
I'm Batman.
Now, that's a real badge. I'm a real cop, but this is a real fucking gun.
You've got a knife.
A knife? That's a knife.
What's happening? Hot stuff?
Hello again, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Awesome 80s Podcast. This is Michael.
This is Lawrence. Hi, Michael.
Hi, how are you?
Been making podcasts great since 2009.
That is a fantastic shirt. I think that is the shirt you wore when you met Dan Hampton.
Is this the shirt I wore when I met Dan Hampton? Hey, if you want to buy a shirt, how can you do so? Any color, any colors, whatever. You don't have to be black and white.
We spent the money to get the one logo, but you can get it any color you want. And you get the t-shirt any color you want.
That's flexibility. I just delivered a whole family shirts tonight. And the mom, the father, the daughter, she cried in my arms. She was so happy. And then her father went out and bowled like 280-something 3 games. It was amazing. Tom S., you're amazing.
And you were almost at 200.
185, baby, 185. Reppin'. That's without my handicap.
What's your handicap? What are you carrying?
I don't want to talk about it.
All right, continue.
There's 1, 2, 3, and sometimes 4 boxes keep popping up tonight. But I see 3 now, and there's a bearded fellow. Oh, by the way, I got rid of my beard for you.
You look handsome, regardless.
Thank you. Thank you. But I do see a guy who still has beard. Who is that?
We do have this is our 3rd time he's been on the show.
Yes.
And whenever he does come on the show, at least a third of the time, one of us has been having a child. So.
Almost 1 year to the day. Is that right, Michael?
Yeah, my wife talked about it at dinner that she went and walked with the neighbor, and then all of a sudden she was having contractions right after that.
And what's the year anniversary of that?
That the baby was born.
Yeah, no, but what day?
It was the 13th.
Okay,
so.
Yeah, so we're almost there. Chris Vander Kaay, hey!
Hey!
Welcome.
You guys. Is it going to be you or me tonight, Lawrence, with the kids?
You can have one. I'm good.
Thanks. I appreciate your permission.
So last time you were on the show, I got a text from Michael like 4 hours before the show, and he said, I'm having a baby. And then I said, what time will you be on for the podcast? And then he said, F you. And then I said, Chris, we're doing it alone. And that was the episode we know as House. A very great episode. One of my all-time favorites. Because no one was sassing. No one was holding down my talent. You just let me shine.
I remember that. You called, you said, suit up, and keep your mouth shut.
Throughout our tenure of our friendship, we tend to hamstring each other, either on purpose or on accident. So.
Well, I've always felt that if you don't make it in life, you need someone to blame, and you guys have other.
If you only knew how much blame there was to go around. Speaking of that, MF Jones is in the house. MH is somewhere to the left of me. All right, his house, his rules. Stuck in the middle. So, Chris, what do you do? Like, what's your deal, man?
You know, it's funny you should mention that. It's the perfect time for a product plug. No, last time, 2 times we were on, I was shamelessly plugging mine and my lovely wife Kathy's first book, Anatomy of Fear, and in the interim, about a month and a half ago, our second book came out. It's a nonfiction book called Horror Films by Subgenre. And it's basically a book that breaks down horror into the 75 most popular, or at least prolific subgenres, and we just sort of talk about the philosophy of why they exist, what it says about people that they flock to certain ones and not other ones, and then hopefully some fun recommendations from each category.
Awesome. So, say don't have the book, which I do because I'm a big shot. But say I don't. Say I'm just average Dave R. listening to this podcast, and I don't know how to get this book. Where would I find it?
God, that's a tough one. All right, hang on a second. I've got it written down here somewhere, I'm sure. No, I would say, well, McFarland is the company that put it out, so you can obviously go to McFarland.com, and you can find it there. Just look up horror films by subgenre. Or Amazon is a great place to go, and for anyone who has checked it out, obviously, spin them by Amazon and drop in a review of it. You know what? I'll be honest. Even if you haven't read it and you want to give us a good review, I'm not going to nip you for not having read it. But yeah, those are the two best places to grab it. It is available on some bookstore shelves, but it's sort of a hybrid educational book, so it's not available through the same venues. This is primarily a book for schools and libraries, but I also think for people who are aficionados of the genre, it's a really fun read because it's a primer for people who don't know much, but for people who love the genre, it really digs deep and recommends some stuff you probably didn't know about or had forgotten about.
So say I live in a small town and I don't have an Amazon in my town.
I've heard of Amazon. I think it's going to be big someday, Clint.
Well, I can send you the internet on a disc if you want, and you can just use that.
They do that in Cuba.
How many hours free do I get on that disc?
Good times.
100 hours.
Save that for the We Love the 90s podcast.
I did see like
coming up in
one of those like true 90s facts was that like AOL was using more CD discs than the actual music business was making CD discs.
It was just
Yeah, I remember when it was a commodity. I remember somebody coming into school one day and they had a stack in their hands. They were like, "Look how many hours I could go on the internet."
Awesome. I'm here on McFarland.com as we speak. So you said this is more of an educational book. So have you guys, I know it just came out, but is that you guys' target focus is kind of more of schools and facilities of learning and higher knowledge?
It is. It's sort of. This is a sort of a hybrid educational book. That's the great thing about McFarland is they do educational books, but I sort of call it pop educational, in that they do scholarly texts, but it's about stuff that people are interested in, pop culture stuff, film and television, old-time radio. They've got a lot of great old-time radio books and stuff like that. So they really sort of try to reach the far corners of pop culture, where if you listen to like a movie news podcast or read a blog, it's all about what's happening now, what's coming up, but there's not really much in the way of looking back and talking about things in context. And that's something McFarland's really good with, is sort of trying to put pop culture in context. So we're trying to sort of be that halfway point between dry scholarly stuff and then also the sort of exciting pop culture stuff that people are really interested in.
So books that would have appealed to me if I were still in school.
Yes.
Which I'm not.
You are our one-person target audience.
Well, that's good to know. So here's the thing, is we do something positive for you, but then we do something negative for you, which is you come on our show and we say, hey, we'd love to promote your products. We enjoy your products. I've read both of your books now. But then the negative is then you have to watch or at least review a movie that we pick in your genre. And I'm sure when you got the message that said Night of the Creeps, you were like, son of a...
I will admit that it was fun is not the word I would use about revisiting this film. Illuminating might be a better term.
So we'll shed some insight as to why this movie was picked. And it's my fault, even though I didn't pick it. You see, I am not the greatest fan of your genre, although, once again, I've read both of your books.
What do you mean, your genre?
Well, both of you.
Oh, did you not know? That belongs to me.
Okay.
Well, both of you, all right? So, to make this easy on me, because Michael has made me watch some shit horror movies for our 10 year of our friendship, he picked a movie that he thought might appeal also to comic sensibilities of 80s pop culture. And I will say, on that, and that alone, you nailed it, Michael. You nailed it.
You're welcome.
I did watch this movie today. I did. I'm gonna say enjoy it for what it was.
Okay.
I'm just gonna say that. I do not have these horror movie sensibilities or credos that you guys may have. I think this was just a nutty romp. What a farce, huh?
It was a rollicking good time.
So, Michael, what made you, when I said the words, Chris Vander Kaay is coming back, what made you say this is the movie? Because you actually sent me a few, but this is the one that you said, I think this is what you'll enjoy.
Well, most of the serious horror films, I mean, as much as an 80s horror film can be serious, I don't think that you'd like them at all. There was other ones that are very comedic oriented and kind of lighthearted and tongue in cheek, and this is definitely one of them.
I mean, I sat through Sleepaway, or not, what was it? What was the camp?
Sleepaway Camp.
Sleepaway Camp. I sat through that.
Was that my choice? I don't think that was my choice.
No, I think that was Karen's.
But I think
But I
Halloween 3 I chose, though.
What?
I think I chose Halloween 3, though.
Yeah, the worst of all Halloween movies.
Or the
Starring
best-
the great Tom Atkins from Night of the Creeps.
Yeah.
Yes. So, let's talk about it. Night of the Creeps. In the first scene, first thing I noticed is Jason Lively's name in the credits, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
Fresh off the
his
airplane
sister
from Europe.
still stars. What?
He's fresh off the airplane from Europe.
Well, his sister still stars in some of my favorite dreams.
Okay.
Robin Lively, Teen Witch herself. Jason Lively, European Vacation, right?
And his half sister is with Deadpool right now.
You know, I just have to say, I've been on 3 times, and 3 different times we've talked about Teen Witch. I don't,
That's because Glenn's trying to relate to you, and that's his only common ground.
Oh no, that's I believe. See, we did the Teen Witch episode, Chris, in episode 4, I believe, and Michael's not a big drinker, and he got drunk that night, and in the process of getting drunk, he proceeded on air to just berate me and call me a little girl several times. It's there, episode 4, like 300 episodes ago, because of my love of Teen Witch. But you know what? I like boys. I mean, that's a song. That's a song.
Go ahead and top that, Glenn. He likes boys.
Yeah, you got to be careful in context there, man.
So the first thing I noticed about this movie is that in the first scene, my muscle men come alive. My little muscle men pink toys are like fighting things. I don't know what happened in the first scene. I'm going to be honest with you. There were like aliens, but they looked like the little muscle men toys from the 80s, and they had guns.
I'm so glad you said Muscle Men toys, because the only thing I knew it looked like something, and the only thing that was coming to my head was like, this looks like a 9-month-old toddler that's just jacked on steroids.
They looked like those little. Do you know what I'm talking about? There were these little tiny pink muscle men.
Like 1.5 inches maybe, or 2 inches, 3 inches.
Yeah, and you'd get them like in a barrel.
Yeah, Steven had like this ring where you can put them in these little handles, and you can have them wrestle each other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you remember?
Okay.
I'm trying to remember. Did those come with pants? Like, because the aliens didn't.
Exactly.
No, they did not come with pants, I don't think. So it was just a complete ripoff. Or, I mean, one thing ripped off the other. I'm going to assume Muscleman came first, but I don't know. So then all of a sudden we go to black and white, Sorority Row, 1959. It was black and white, right?
Yeah.
Right.
One of the aliens turned against one of the other aliens and dumped one of the experiments onto the 1959 Earth.
So first thing we hear on the radio, all points bulletin, Crestwick Institute for the Criminally Insane. Turn it off. We have a prisoner loose. So right away I checked that off my horror movie genre list. Escape mental patient.
Well, I mean, we had aliens, escape mental patients. Keep going.
Well, we had teenagers at Makeout Point, right?
Yeah.
Next scene, we got teenagers at Makeout Point necking. Ray, the cop, sees his girlfriend Pam or his ex. She's necking with Johnny. He's kind of pissed.
He was working class, and he wasn't good enough for her.
Yeah, there was some talk at the Delta house or whatever. No, it wasn't the Delta. That was the guys. Whatever the sorority was, there was some talk earlier of this. Anyway, Johnny sees an explosion in the sky. He goes to follow it. And then some things happen. Johnny gets, I don't know, sucked into it. I mean, you really couldn't tell. I don't know. There was some smoke. Johnny's going like this.
They just leave it ambiguous, and then 1986.
No.
I'm sorry.
Let's not forget that, was it Pam? Pam gets chopped up. Gets chopped up with an axe. So check that out, Axe Killer.
Okay, good.
Yeah, 1986 Pledge Week, and this is everything I love about the 80s. The first 5 minutes of 1986 Pledge Week is what I love. So, Chris, we have two dorks, sorry.
Of course.
Walking around sorority row. We got TP. Every house is TP. Now, is it Jason or JC or both?
What do you mean?
The guy, the nerd on the crutch, the dork on the crutch. Is his name Jason or is it JC? It sounded like both throughout the movie, but I was watching. I don't know.
I thought it was JC.
That's what I thought too.
Okay, so Jason's in my head. JC it is.
Yeah. Well, because then it sticks with it holds to the martyr figure, the Messiah that saves no.
That's deep.
Yeah, it's too deep. I think I may have just
Okay.
been grasping at some straws there.
So, JC, he's the duck. Or he's the core game of Dream a Little Dream. He's got his crutch. He's walking with his friend Chris. By the way, they don't tell you Chris's name until about 15 minutes in. I don't know if you guys realize that. But I'm trying to write notes, and I had to leave blank spaces because they never said Chris's name, and I didn't want to look it up. So, they end up at a party at the Beta House because that's where the hot girl went. This party, guys, this is everything I pictured 1986 parties. This is everything I missed about not being a teenager in the 80s. Was this party. Everything 80s, everything. They have Pepsi Cola paper cups.
There's conveniently located Miller Lite everywhere you go.
So we're not really, now we're just kind of, now we've turned it from a horror movie to an 80s movie. We have that transition. So at this point, Chris, do you remember the first time you saw this movie?
I do, because the first time I saw all of this movie was 6 days ago.
Okay.
Oh!
I have started this movie before. I have not finished this movie before.
So we are honored then.
Yes, absolutely. I would say the reason that actually, when you guys mentioned we were watching this, the reason I was excited to revisit this is because this is the film by 80s mainstay Fred Dekker of Monster Squad fame. And ironically, one of the few 80s filmmakers who is still currently working. I'm sure you guys know this. He just wrote the script for the new Predator film. And Shane Black, another 80s mainstay, is going to be directing it. So it's really interesting, the DNA of this movie connecting not only to stuff that's happening now, but also Fred Dekker created the story for House, which we talked about last time.
Yes, and you mentioned Monster Squad. Andre Gower, star of Monster Squad, friend of the show, has been on. And so this all ties into this little 80s universe that, like you said, is still expanding into modern day. So, did your wife watch this with you?
She was in the room. At a certain point, she found something better to do on the phone. But she stuck with me. She heard all the lines. She rolled her eyes at all the appropriate places.
Check and check. So, we have the classic 80s scenario. We have the hot girl. She's talking to the jock guy. We have the great best friend, JC, who goes over, gets rid of the jock guy, Steve. Now, the interesting thing about Steve is his eyebrows connect. That's the only interesting thing I can tell you.
It felt like they were going for an ogre situation from Revenge of the Nerds, but it was very, very dumb. He was a dumb jock.
Yeah, he was not the William Zabka pretty boy jock with the hard nose.
No. Aryan features.
Well, that's why JC was quick to come up with a Nazi joke.
Yeah.
So I have a lot of quotes from this movie I wrote down, more than normal. The jock Steve, he tells JC, "You're cruising, man. You're cruising. Cruising for a bruising." So that's a classic 80s roll your eye. I'm sure your wife rolled her eyes at that moment. So JC goes and reports back to Chris what he finds, but he lies. He says Cindy doesn't have a boyfriend. Even Cindy told him that she does. And JC seems like he's the rational one. He's like, you know what? Just go talk to her, man. But Chris, he has a great 80s idea. Screw talking to her. I'm going to pledge the betas. I think Jesus Christ is the man in this situation.
No, this is classic Joseph Campbell structure here. Your friend says, walk across the room and say hi to her, and he says, no, I'm going to go the long way around and do something super difficult instead.
Right. So the frat comes up with this great idea, which we later find out, is to have them find a cadaver and dump it on another fraternity's doorstep. Brad's the frat leader. Also, we find out is the boyfriend of, what was her name again? Sorry. I forgot our female's name here.
Cynthia. Cynthia.
Cindy, yeah. Is that right, Cindy?
Cynthia.
No, it's Cindy. She doesn't like to be called Cynthia.
Exactly, yeah.
I think it was Barb.
So, Brad is Cindy's beau hunk. So, we find out Brad has no intention of having them join the frat, so we're still in 80s mode until they accidentally break into the laboratory. And this is where we go back and we never leave the mad camp genre of horror. Or what would you call this? It's not really a horror movie, is it?
Yeah, well, that's the beauty of 80s films, is that they decided, I think, in about 1981, that genres were no longer necessary. Big Trouble in Little China, this movie, just throw everything against the wall, you know? Night of the Comet. Like, you can cram them all together. You can have a high-concept science fiction horror frat comedy, and that's what they did.
I was thinking the Reanimator to a certain extent, too.
Yeah, that's a good point. It was right around this time where everybody, I think, was sort of piggybacking on like in horror you were allowed to do anything in the 80s. You know, like if you watch Evil Dead 2, that movie is all over the map as far as comedy and horror, over the top gore, and like Three Stooges slapstick right next to each other. And this movie kind of does the same thing.
Hey guys, I saw that one. I saw Evil Dead 2.
Good time. That is a great movie.
So at this point, they accidentally break into this lab. We see Johnny, who we saw earlier. He's in suspended animation. He's a corpsicle. Guys? Corpsicle. He's a corpsicle.
Break that one down for me.
Well, see, he's a corpse. He's frozen like a popsicle. He just doesn't have the stick.
I went to bicycle. I get you now.
Oh, whew. See, Chris, it's just been a year. We have to get on that level again.
A little rusty.
So they break out the dead guy because, you know, there's a corpsicle and they need a corpse, right? The dead guy kind of freaks out, gets out. They run away from him like banshees, scream like banshees.
Much like every other great 80s movie, there's racism against Asian.
We're not there yet.
This is that's like John Hughes level of Asian racism too. Like they really aim for the fences.
Not quite Breakfast at Tiffany's level. Mickey Rourke level, or not Mickey Rourke. Oh my
Mickey
God.
Rooney, yeah.
Mickey Rooney level. Not quite there, but still John Hughes level racism. I'll give you that. So they run to the dorm room, and the scientist, who's played by somebody famous,
Was it David Paymer? Was that?
Paymer.
Yeah.
He's in everything, but I remember him mostly as being the guy from Crazy People with Dudley Moore.
Hello, how the hell are you?
Yeah. A wonderful word. Hello.
Yeah, I actually remember him. Please do not tell anyone else this except the entire internet. But I remember him as Billy Crystal's less talented brother in Mr. Saturday Night.
Okay.
Oh. Wow. Well, if I didn't see a selfie of Bette Midler nude today, I would say it's the second worst thing I've seen today. She wasn't really nude. It was staged. There's a whole feud. Don't worry about it. You'll find it. Just go to TMZ.
No, I won't.
Still
I
have to
promise
look
you I
at
will not.
70. Can you believe Bette Midler is 70? Jesus, where does the time go? So they run into the dorm room. Chris is kind of a dick. JC kind of calls him out for being a chicken shit, which I liked, because Chris is just kind of down on everything. And they do have this best friend conversation where JC calls Chris out on his shit, and then they end it. Now, we're gonna go behind the curtain here, Chris. Oftentimes, maybe 4 hours ago, Michael and I will call each other on their bullshit. When we do it in person, we tend to try to end it in a pillow fight. And that's what they did, is they ended it in a pillow fight. All best friend fights end in a pillow fight.
There are only two rules in the world. In marriage, you don't go to bed angry. Best friends, when you call them on their shit, you end it with a pillow fight.
Yes! I live by both of those. So we go from their pillow fight to a very confusing scene if you're watching for the first time and have no context. There's a man in a suit on a beach drinking from a coconut. There's hotties in and out of the water. And then all of a sudden there's an axe murderer who he goes to shoot, and then the mustachioed hero wakes up. And we're to assume that this is the police officer who had a chance to, who we saw back in 1959. And he's having a dream, and he gets called about the scientist in the dead lab. And this, my friends, is what I call the Lenny Briscoe fantasy sequence. If you're a fan of Law & Order, then you know Lenny Briscoe is the cop played by Jerry Orbach with every one-liner possible. And this guy killed the one-liners. Everything is a reference to a 1960s cartoon. The line, what is this, a homicide or a bad B movie?
Yeah, well, listen, we cannot walk away without saying that in the history of introductory lines for grizzled detectives, nothing is both better and worse than answering the phone with, "Thrill me." I couldn't believe not only that he said it that time, but every single time he answered the phone. Literally, it was like, you know how there are people who decide they're going to give themselves a nickname? Like, I feel like at some point that guy decided he's going to be like, "I'm the Thrill Me guy."
Here's the thing, is he forces nicknames on people.
Oh, that's right, I forgot.
What did he call Chris?
Oh, it was paired names.
Chris.
It was paired names. They both had
No,
nicknames. It wasn't Statler and Waldorf, but it was something like that. The best part of it was that they tried to use it for pathos later when he came to him and he said, when JC, spoiler alert, bought it, when he went to talk to him, he almost when he was choked up when he said he died, but he used the stupid nickname that the cop gave him to describe him.
They got Alfalfa.
They got Alfalfa. That's what it was.
Alfalfa. I was thinking that Ray Cameron, this is the guy who Tom Atkins plays, like he created his own backstory. Like he'd seen 70s movies. He'd seen all these grizzled films that came out in the 70s. He's like, I'm more badass than those people. I need to put my stamp on being a cop in this town. And I think Thrill Me was one of those stamps he made.
Oh,
yeah. That and keeping the car from 1959, even though everyone else is driving a new vehicle.
Yeah, so he forces Spanky on Chris. Yeah, that's what he calls him. So, So the cop has just every line. Everything is a reference to something before 1965. Cartoons, the Little Rascals, obviously there. So he's got all the lines. We cut from the crime scene, and we see what I have to think is an ode to Adventures in Babysitting. They came out around the same time, but Brad's license plate is Bradster. It reminds me so much of So Cool Mike in Adventures in Babysitting.
It's not so cool, but it is the Bradster.
Bradster.
He was, I mean, as far as other 80s bullies go, he's good, but they don't give him enough scenes to chew on.
Yeah. This is no Just One of the Guys.
Yeah.
Ha! William Zabka.
Lift those tables.
Our guy. So then we cut to a weird scene in the sorority, which seems really out of place, so you know it's going to mean something later on. And that's where a random girl just says, "Hey, can I store my brains here?"
I mean that's what sororities do. I thought that's part of what they do.
Rated basement. Is that okay? All right. So you know at some point that was going to be a thing.
Sororities aren't just for partying, Lawrence. Some place you have to store the brains.
Brains.
I mean, it's not like they had an empty room with a frozen corpse at the college that they could keep brains in.
And this is where we get our first zombie at the sorority house. Now, was it him whose head I forget. Was it his corpse they found on the doorstep, or was it one of the girls? It was his, I believe.
Yeah, it was his. Yeah, nobody else had died yet.
Yeah. So they find the zombie corpse. Detective has some flashbacks about someone getting buried when he shows up there, and it leads you to believe that he never killed the psycho, the way the flashbacks end. The hero, our heroes, JC and Chris, are walking on the quad. They get surrounded by the frat. The frat and Brad do not like the things that they did. With the corpse, they're saying, "Hey, it wasn't me." JC calls Brad a Nazi, basically, an Aryan child, as you mentioned.
And then, like, the very next scene, he's wearing a T-shirt with the German logo on it.
Oh, I didn't catch that.
Yeah.
So Brad kicks out JC's crutch, and then that's when you see there's tension between Cindy and Brad. So you're saying there's a chance. So all of a sudden the cops show up and ruin Chris's boner time. Cops take him into the police station. I don't know where that came from. And once again our favorite cop he's tired of their collegiate tomfoolery.
Oh God, golden line, man. The only thing better than collegiate tomfoolery is saying it was insane, it was deranged, demented maybe, but it could possibly be described as collegiate tomfoolery. Such a good line.
And this is this is where we get our racism.
Yes.
What do we have that's going to round out this movie? What's going to make it an 80s? Oh, we're going to just inject some racism right here.
Yeah. 2 scoops of racism.
Our is right, so I'm just going to call him the captain from now on, the police guy. As he's describing the scene, he keeps describing that they were screaming like banshees, which are Corey Haim. Oh, by the way, 8 years ago today, Corey Haim passed. So.
Oh, wow. Well, one thing I did like was that there was the grizzled cop, Tom Atkins, but they also had the angry black captain, which was perfect.
Real quick, I was in the middle of a sales pitch. If you want to purchase the rare VHS cassette of Corey Haim's special behind-the-scenes documentary, it is available on Amazon. Look for seller Lawrence Tucker, and you can buy that for $80, which is cheaper than all other listings. It's been there for 8 years as of next week.
You could just try eBay, Craigslist. I'm sure you could get that out of your basement.
I don't really want to sell it.
Okay.
I don't really.
What happens if that person actually does? They click to buy. What are you going to do then, Glenn?
I'll sell it. $80, sure.
Give your Amazon rating, Glenn.
I'll sell it.
All right.
If someone clicks to buy my $80 Corey Haim VHS I will sell it in a second. But I'm not going to go out of my way to sell it. It's like my wife tonight's like, you can get $2,000 for that Pulp Fiction banner. Why don't you sell it? Because I don't want to sell it. I want to keep it.
Like your baseball cards, you're going to hang on to those until they come back around?
They're going to come back around one day.
You hold on to that hope, man. Your hope brings me hope.
Thank you. Thank you. Michael, thank you for that purchase, that Russian Cubs jersey, too.
Oh, you're welcome.
Much appreciated. So, then at this point, JC starts repeating "Screaming Like Banshees," and then I don't know, we want to say Chinaman?
Yeah, Chinaman's not at all offensive. Maybe we could call him an Oriental.
Oriental.
I once dated a girl who would tell me Oriental is a rug. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think Chinaman is just a slur.
I think. No.
Well, what's the correct nomenclature?
Asian American? I think.
Well, how do we know he's American? Just because he's
How
here?
do we know he's Asian? Racist.
Keep America great.
I forgot my hat.
We made a mistake last week. So I'm no longer going to ask people their politics. It was a huge error. He said liberal. I assumed he was not voting for Trump. All right. So, we have some fun with the Banshee. Everyone's repeating the Banshee. Then we go back. The zombie scientist awakes, walks right out of the police station. The black captain didn't care. Walks right past him.
Yeah, crack police
Cuts to
were
the
going
sorority
on there
house.
as one of the cops bids him a good evening.
Good day. Good day, zombie. Bradford calls Cindy. She's still upset. And then we meet the zombie cat.
I thought the zombie cat was fantastic, and also, I mean, some of the other special effects, like the exploding.
Yeah, let's talk about that real quick.
Like the slugs themselves that transfer the zombiness from one person to another, they were amazing. I have no idea how they did that. I thought it was great.
Also, credit where credit is due to subverting the cliched expectation of there's a weird noise at the door, you open it, the cat runs by, and then somebody goes, oh, that stupid cat, and then nothing happens. Instead, oh no, it's a cat, but it's actually a zombie cat that's going to shoot a slug into my face.
Yeah. Oh, pretty cat. Oh, you look funny, cat. What's going on?
So, tell me about the effects. Like, what do you guys think about it? I compared to other
I agree with the practical effects of the slugs. I thought that was great, and I definitely think this movie was a progenitor of Slither several decades later, which also dealt with slugs and practical effects in very gory and hilarious fashion.
It might be something you would enjoy, Glenn. It's very lighthearted and fun.
Don't tell me what I would enjoy.
Damn it. I know you better than you know yourself sometimes. And you take a hard look in that mirror and think about what I just said, okay?
Don't look hard. Don't do it. It's a trap.
But yeah, I'd say almost, and then at the end there's the spaceship too, and I thought that, I mean, I assume they had to have used practical effects, so I thought that looked really good. And then the exploding stuff was all very over the top and wasn't super great, but I mean,
yeah. I think the one image I had a problem with was the, what do you want to call it, the uvulating pile of slugs in the basement.
Yeah.
It sort of looked like they had just sort of tentacles shooting off towards him right at the last shot before he lit the lighter. That was a bit, like, right up until that point I was with it, but then it just sort of looked like a pile of floppy black cucumbers sort of being waved by some stage hands on strings.
Yeah.
I was with them up till there.
So, we have the police officer captain reviewing old crime scene photos. And this is where we first kind of realize that every time someone dies, the zombie dies, we see the bugs running. Cindy and Brad get in a fight, so she runs to the Chuckleheads dorm room. That's what Brad calls them. They go on a walk, all three of them. What kind of happens, Michael?
He professes his love for her. I don't know. I don't remember. Okay.
I do remember that JC had to go to the can.
Oh, that's right. He's got to go to
That's as much I remember.
Was there a courtesy thing? Would there would be like a 3-person situation, like in college or as a young adult? Like, I gotta excuse myself so they can have a little more
We
quiet
actually
time.
made a hand signal to him to leave.
Yeah. I think that they call that the sock on the doorknob move, right?
Yeah, exactly. I lived with Michael for a while, and he never respected the sock.
Well, when you have no clean socks, it's a big deal to hang one out on the door.
So,
Because Glenn's socks were all filthy.
Yeah, what happens was he sent JC away. JC goes to the bathroom, where he encounters a zombie, and we'll get back to him.
It feels like we didn't really press the fact that he had disability. Like, he was on crutches. Like, it felt like other 80s movies, they had people with, like, in wheelchairs and stuff, but they never had a guy with these crutches. So I thought it was kind of cool they had introduced a character like this. And then this is when he discovers the fire is going to help them defeat the slugs eventually.
Yeah, I do have to say, I also like the fact that even though he had the arm crutches, unlike most movies at the time, there was no need to address it other than the fact that it was there. Like there was no either punchline or there was no sort of like, I don't know what you call it, like bleeding heart moment, where there was like, I guess getting kicked out from underneath his arms was the bleeding heart moment, but like he never played it like he was a victim, and I thought that was kind of a cool choice.
And it felt like he had more balls than his roommate Chris, the Jason.
He had a lot more balls.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we kind of get away from the. We leave JC. We go back, and at this point, oh, by the way, when JC's in the bathroom doing business, there is a Striper Rules written on the bathroom wall, which I thought was awesome.
I did see that. I think I also saw something that said "best seat in the house" maybe on the wall there.
Oh, I missed it. Cindy now just decides to tell Chris everything. Like, she's seen a zombie cat. She sees these crazy slugs. She sees and Chris is just kind of like nodding, doesn't know what to do, and just kind of hey, I just want to get in your pants. And so she realizes she sounds insane, so she just kind of backs off. But they decide to go to formal together. And we also see real quick, just quick glimpse of someone following them, and we don't know who it is. We're led to believe it's probably someone bad news. Anyway, she ends up asking Chris to formal the next night, which he loves. At this point, the captain confronts Chris. So there's the police officer following the whole time. He recites, basically their whole conversation, and he takes Spanky to his home to drink scotch together and confess to murder. I'm glad that Chris brings this up to him, because there's no point in him confessing to murder to this college student. It makes no sense.
Yeah. No, I'll do you one better. There's not only no reason for him to confess to it, it was the weirdest plot development that both came the latest in the movie and then was also solved the quickest after having been introduced. Like he says, I killed him and I buried him underneath the lady's house. And then 4 minutes later, he comes up out of the house and then they shoot him again.
Right.
Done. Like, wait a minute. Why did you wait so long to introduce that and then immediately just shoot it to pieces?
So sometimes we like to play a little game on here called Writer's Room. So the three of us, we're in a room, we're writing this movie, and we have these Post-it notes, right? And we know what we want, where we want to get to, and we know where we're at, and we're just spitballing here. And Chris, you're just like, fuck it. Let him just confess to Chris that he murdered him to move this thing forward. Is that how this came up with? Were they just stuck? They're how do we bridge this gap between here and here?
Yeah, well, honestly, I think somebody was sitting around and they went, we already had a zombie cat. What about a dog?
We gotta make
will see that
right?
coming. So, yeah, and basically they just reverse engineered from the genius move of also having a dog. They're like, well, who owns a dog? It's going to be an old lady, right? Where's an old lady going to be? Well, watching the girls, right? Well, how are we going to kill the old lady? Well, the corpse that's been under the ground for 35 years, right? It writes itself.
So
One thing I liked about the zombies though is that they remembered what like their last thought was. Like the zombie in the at the college, he had to go bring flowers to the sorority house, and the zombie underneath the bed or underneath the old lady's house was like, "I gotta chop somebody up with this axe."
Yeah, it's true. It's like that's like the one piece of the person that's left is like whatever the unfinished business was is like, all right, fine, I'll get that done, but then we're taking over the world.
So, one of the great lines while they were Spanky and the police officer were sitting there talking is they were talking about their high school sweethearts, and the captain goes, "Your high school sweetheart went on with her life. Mine got hacked to pieces." It's just like that's like he was setting him up so he could say that line.
Yeah. It kind of we joked about it, but it kind of feels like he navigates every single conversation with the intent to have a Riggs Murtaugh like bone maul right at the end. You know, like he builds every conversation to go boom right at the end.
I'm too old for this shit.
Yeah.
So yeah, we find out he tracked the psycho, killed him, buried him in a vacant lot, which is where the house mother of the sorority's house stands now. Zombie came through the floor of the den mother's house. The cop grabs his gun. They chase the zombie / mental patient. I already killed you, you son of a bitch. I already killed you. And then he kills him again. This time they all see the bugs escape the zombie. And then we cut to the next morning. JC's missing, but Chris doesn't seem too concerned about it. You guys seen JC? No, right. And then we get our gratuitous boobs in the shower scene as the sorority girls are getting ready. Can't have an 80s movie, especially a horror movie, without boobs in the shower.
I know they tried to sneak a couple of them in, like, oops, here's a little bit of nipple. I'm like, just show me your nipple. I know your nipple's gonna be there. Just show it to me, Jesus.
Then we see some frat boy horseplay as they're getting ready for the big night.
Cummerbunds everywhere. I think this was like the exact same time my uncle and aunt got married in the 80s, and I had to wear a cummerbund in there. I was like, I remember that damn cummerbund. No one wears cummerbunds anymore. Maybe we should bring it back, Glenn.
But like this slightly changed, right? You got to turn them sideways so you can see the back a little bit. So
Right.
on a hat.
So this is how they cut the scene. Sorority girl boobs in a shower. Little zombie roaches. Fraternity horseplay. Zombie roaches. Back to sorority girls getting ready.
But they're all equal portions naked at the same time, which I do appreciate.
Right, and then back to so they just cut back and forth between sorority, zombie roaches, and fraternity. Chris finds the recorder in the room. Says listen. And it's JC basically telling him that he's been infected, that he's got no pulse, no heartbeat, that he can feel him inside his brain, and that he tells him fire will kill him, and that he basically went to the furnace room. And it sounds like he committed suicide. Is that what you guys got? Like he basically killed himself to not be infected? I don't know. Where did you guys
I got the impression that, ironically, he was trying to protect everyone by killing himself after going back to a full dorm to leave a note. But yeah, like the one saddest thing for me was the indignity of the way that JC left the movie. He was belly down in the bathroom when a slug flew at his face. We never saw him again until he was belly down in the boiler room with 5 dead slugs crawling out of his open skull.
Yes,
it was like, really, that was... We didn't even get to see him triumph for just a moment before the death. You know, like you want the scene where he's choking 2 slugs with either hand as one crawls down his throat and he's fighting to the death, and instead, sort of just laying there in a pile.
No, I completely agree. It was horrible. Like JC was obviously, I think, everyone's favorite character, or at least the way he was supposed to be.
And they were best friends. They did pillow fights. I mean, it felt like they were really friends, and it was a better part of the movie is that they had like, yeah.
And that
But
would have been a great callback if he fought the slugs off with a pillow.
Okay.
But like, this is what separates this movie from just your normal '80s teen movie. Is that in an '80s teen movie there would have been something that brought like JC back, but not in a
At
horror
the end,
movie.
he had a flamethrower at the end also or something. Like somehow that's the way it ended up.
Or at the very least, you get your Nightmare on Elm Street sort of like friend died in front of the mirror montage. Like JC died and he's the motivation for me to take everything else out. We didn't even kind of get that. He was just sort of like, oh, that's a bummer. My friend's dead.
Right, like he barely acknowledged it. So,
He cried to the detective that they got alfalfa.
well, the next thing we see is Brad drunk. He's mad at Cindy. And he sees a zombie bug, and then the dog makes Brad a zombie. Cut to the captain drinking at home. He unduct tapes his door so Chris can say, "They got alfalfa." Chris explains.
The best joke of the movie, I don't even know if it's meant as a joke, but he taped the door shut so nothing could get in, and it's foolproof unless there's a knock. Like, how did he think they were going to get in?
He never looked to see who was outside.
Yeah, it's true. Well, the slugs don't have knuckles, so it couldn't have been them.
So Chris then explains to him how the bugs work. Then at this point we see the frat bus. The frat bus crashes to avoid the zombie dog.
Right after someone, I believe the toast was, "Let's get done, dudes."
Yes.
Is that right?
It was. Let's get done, dudes. And then we see Chris and the captain go meet the evidence clerk. Who played the evidence clerk?
Oh, that was Dick Miller, wasn't it?
Yes, it was.
That guy, Dick Miller.
I felt I'll put this. We could talk about it at the end, but it felt like he should have joined the group. I think that would have been
He
pretty.
should have been the detective. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
Well, instead the detective pulls a shotgun on him because he wants his flamethrower.
Oh, you mean his police issue flamethrower that he went to requisition?
I don't have the right forms for that. Sorry.
Zombie dog invades the frat bus, infects them all. I'm so sure. Don't everyone run. Answer the door at once. Oh, I'm so sure. Don't everyone run and answer the door at once. Says sorority girl who's about to be attacked by zombies. She kept saying, "I'm so sure."
Yeah, I was going to say, she had two lines, and I think the beginning of both of them was "I'm so sure." Is she in the credits as "I'm so sure, girl"?
Yes, "I'm so sure, girl" is what she should be. If she isn't credited for, which I'm not sure, she should be. So Brad shows up at the sorority house. We see the frat boy zombies walking towards, but Cindy is breaking up with Brad, but doesn't realize that he's a zombie.
It tells you a lot about Brad's previous personality.
Right. So she breaks up with zombie Brad, and then Chris and the fire chief show up, and then they firebomb zombie Brad. This boy's the frat sorority house. They surround it. I got good news and bad news, ladies. Your dates are here. Bad news, they're dead.
Yeah, I have to say that this is such a brilliant 80s ending. This is everything had to be bigger in the 80s. That's the way movies worked and the way sequels worked. And here we're saying, no, we don't just shoot zombies. No, we don't just burn zombies. You got to shoot and then burn zombies. You got to do it all.
Right.
And explode
So
them.
you have to shoot them to stop them, and then burn them to kill the zombie slugs or cockroaches or whatever. So,
But in
Chris and
rapid
Cindy-
succession, you can't burn them later. It's got to be
Right now.
bang flame, bang flame.
So Chris and Cindy made a great team doing this, but then we cut back to the captain inside the sorority, and he goes, "It's Miller time for no reason." What do you mean it's Miller time? There's no place in this movie for it's Miller time. It made no sense.
Bob Uecker commercials made a social impact to him.
Yeah, it was literally like that. He had an internal clock for how frequently he needed to drop an awesome action line, and that was the time came, and he didn't have anything else in the room, so.
I'm gonna pretend even if it's not true, that he improv this whole movie. So the frat zombies invade the house. They go after the captain. He goes on a shooting streak because he sees this picture of his dead sorority girlfriend from 1959 looking at him, and then he just gets pissed and starts shooting zombies.
It made me think of one of my friends, AJ. I don't know if you've ever met him. He went to the Goodwill and he got like 3 different framed pictures of a sorority from our town because it had a college in it, and he put them up in his apartment. Like those, it was like those, the class of whatever. We had like 30 different sorority girls on it from like 1988. And you're like, why did you pick these up? It's like, because they're awesome.
I've never seen that much perm in one place in my life.
I was thinking. So Chris and Cindy, they hide in the shed. Chris realizes this is a dumb idea that Cindy's let him into. He lets her know that. But Cindy eventually gets caught, and Chris does the one thing he can do, is that he mows the zombie down with a lawnmower. At this point, I'm wondering, where are the rest of the girls? Because they're like outside shooting. The captain's inside in this room shooting, but we don't see the rest of the sorority girls. And right as I write that down, we go inside the house, and there they all are. Chris then is trying to figure out why are they going there. And bam! Brains in the basement. It comes back up an hour later. There's a big thing of brains stored in the sorority basement for the weekend. So he clears all the sorority girls out of the house. They goes downstairs. He realizes...
I'm sorry, we have to stop there for just a second because Chris has the opportunity for a great action movie line and instead chooses to say, I believe 5 or 6 times in a row, get out of the house now. That's it.
Get out of the house now.
Like, I guess the detective sucked all the awesome out of the room, and all that was left was sort of like, I don't know, airline stewardess instructions was like the best that he could do. Make it to your closest exit. Everyone remain calm.
So they go to the basement. There are thousands of slugs, cockroaches, whatever you want to call, on the brains. The chief's already there, and he's dousing them in gas. We get a 20-second countdown from the chief, and then
the chief has once again utilized duct tape to cover his mouth, which he immediately takes off again.
He does.
Duct tape is the most useless weapon in this entire film.
Chris gets out of the house. He signals for everyone to move back. Right when he joins them, he just decided that they were far enough. Even though he's trying to, like, as he's running towards them, he's, like, motioning for them to move back. But then he gets to him and he just stops. He's like, yeah, I guess this is far enough. The house goes up in flames. And then the police finally show up. Like, where were they? There's shotguns everywhere. It's a small town. Like, where are the police? Anyway, the house goes up in flames. Chris and Candy kiss as people who didn't just lose, like, some of the closest people to him, being JC and the Chief. Like, well, that's fine. We're just going to kiss because, you know, that's what's supposed to happen. But wait a minute. I'm wrong, because the burnt Chief walks out, clears escape his brain, and head to the cemetery where the alien ship is hovering above. End scene.
So this had 2 different endings. There's a theatrical cut, and then there's a director's cut. Is that right?
Oh, I didn't know that. I know the one about the alien ship in the graveyard. What's the other ending?
I guess they didn't have the spaceship in one of them.
That was the theatrical cut, no spaceship. The director's cut, spaceship.
So what, it just ended with the chief falling over and the slugs taken off to the graveyard?
I think so, yeah. Did you guys like this movie? Would you watch it again?
No, I would not watch it again, but I did enjoy it.
Okay.
I had fun watching it, but I agree. I probably would not watch it again. I would watch any other Fred Dekker movie before I would watch this again, and that includes RoboCop 3.
Okay. There was, I don't know if I thought they were watching TV in there, and I thought I saw them watching Plan 9 from Outer Space, and it kind of felt like it was giving a nod to these type of zombies. It felt like in zombie movies, there's like the alien zombie, the government zombie, mysterious disease zombie, but the the people from Haiti, those kind of zombies. And it felt like that they in Planet from Outer Space they had like the aliens-induced zombies. In this movie, they had the aliens-induced zombies. But it felt like if I was going to remake an 80s horror movie, this would be right up my alley. It felt like there just wasn't enough 80s in this movie. It felt like the creator, Fred Decker, loved horror movies. He loved science fiction movies, but he didn't really love 80s movies. And it felt... Go ahead.
He established the 80s portion in like a 10-minute span. And I think his idea was, well, I made like 10 minutes of non-horror movie and made it an 80s movie, so that's where the 80s goes.
Yeah, I felt like it was like this Trojan horse of like 80s movies. Like, yeah, it felt like they could have had more like better scenes with the Aryan bad boy. Like if you like one or two more scenes of just him being an a-hole. Do you know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah.
The Aryan bad boy is one of my... I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to say, I think that the problem I had with the movie is that it was silly, but it wasn't ridiculous. Like, it needed to be, if it was going to be what it was at like a 6, and it needed to be at a 10 in order for it to land with the kind of humor he was trying to do. Like, the kind of stuff you're talking about. Like, the boyfriend should have been more over the top, and the detective should have been played, I feel like, if he had played it dead serious like John Vernon did in Killer Clowns from Outer Space, that would have been the right dynamic for the ridiculousness of what's going on, you know?
Two things. First, the Aryan Bad Boy was my favorite 1960s wrestler. And I would totally review Killer Clowns from Outer Space.
okay.
I'm just putting that out there.
Maybe next time.
Noted.
Chris, would you do Killer Clowns from Outer Space?
I loved talking about Killer Clowns from Outer Space. I got to talk to Stephen Chiodo, the director of the movie, for our first book, and he had... You would never expect the kind of intelligence that came from Stephen Chiodo based on watching that movie, like the kind of thought that went into that movie. It's such a fun, weird film, but he really put a lot of thought into that movie in a way that I would never expected when I talked to him. So yeah, I would really love talking about that movie.
All right, so next time you come back, it's not going to be a year. We want you back here in a few months. That's the movie we're going to talk about. I have not seen Killer Clowns from Outer Space in probably 15 years, but I look forward to rewatching that. So that we will put that on the agenda here in a couple months to bring you back to do that movie. I'm not getting rid of you now. I'm just saying.
No, I get it.
I definitely want to do that movie.
Yeah, definitely.
But anyway, bye. No, I'm
and scene.
The business we call show.
So Chris, you wrote. This is your second book that you've written, or have you done other books too?
Yeah, well, this is our second nonfiction book. We've got some fiction stuff floating out there, but most of it's short fiction. The only two full books that we have are the two nonfiction books: the interview one, Anatomy of Fear, and then Horror Films by Subgenre, which is the new one.
Do you have another one in the works?
We have a couple in the works, but we don't have... I don't like to mention anything until...
I understand.
We're at a representation stage, you know? Like, if we've got people looking at it and interested in it, but until somebody says yes, I don't like to talk about it, because especially in the publishing industry, it takes long enough for a book to come out when you have already had it picked up. So if I start talking about it now, God knows when it'll actually be hitting shelves, you know?
Right. Oh, absolutely. I understand. Real quick, we plugged your book, but we also like to always plug Demonic and Other Tales by Garen Cockrell, friend of the show, also horror movie enthusiast. So this is a bunch of short stories. So we always like to plug that as well. You can get it on the Amazon, at your local Amazon bookstore. This should be in every town. So your book is available on Amazon at McFarlane Books. I just went there. It's a really nice website, really easy to look up. I did it during this show. What would you like? What's your favorite? What do you think novices like me will enjoy about this book? Because I'm not a horror movie guy, but I have enjoyed watching these horror movies for this podcast for you guys. So what? I don't know much about horror movies. So what's the appeal to me?
Well, I think it's twofold. The first is we divided it into 75 categories, and for people who don't know much about horror, I think horror gets easily dismissed as sort of lumped in together as one thing or another. Whatever one bad movie someone's seen in horror, that's kind of what they think of horror, you know? Friday the 13th Part 7 or whatever. And the thing about this book is that it tries to break it down into the categories, and then from that extrapolate what does that mean about you? What does it mean about your brain and your past and your philosophies? Like, why do I love watching found footage horror? Why do I not really gravitate towards cannibal movies? What does that say about me? And that's kind of a cool thing about the book, is as you read through, it'll help you start to figure out, like, oh, well, that kind of makes sense. If if I have a fear of this thing, I'm drawn to it or I'm repulsed by it, usually for the same reason. And then the other thing I think that is helpful is that there's 3 or 4 of what we consider like exemplary titles from each subgenre. So if one sounds interesting to you, those 3 or 4 titles will give you a pretty solid encapsulation of what that subgenre is like. And then if you like them, then there's 10 or 11 more what I just call recommendations from the subgenre. And that's just like, if you like this one, here's 10 more that are kind of like it, and go check them out.
That's pretty cool. Awesome. I'm sitting here trying to psychoanalyze myself. Like, I really like Slither and like Evil Dead 2, but it seems like when we have like serious movies that are extra bloody, I just laugh at them.
Mm. Yeah, well, sometimes I think that there's the intentional and the unintentional laugh in horror. The intentional laugh is when somebody's being funny. The unintentional laugh it comes from 2 places. Either something doesn't look realistic, or the human brain automatically reacts to discomfort and awkwardness with laughter. Mm-hmm. And sometimes that's a way to distance yourself from something that does make you uncomfortable.
Michael reacts to everything that makes him uncomfortable. So that's perfect. So I'm not saying I know this for sure, but I'm gonna guess I'm gonna make an assumption the going rate for psychoanalysis is about $125 an hour. So by buying your book, saving tons of money is what it sounds like.
Exactly.
I don't need to go to a therapist. I just read your book, and it tells me everything about myself.
That's basically how I've been shopping it. I've been trying to sort of like, I just want to be the Dr. Phil of horror films. Which is basically to say someone who's terribly untrained and should not be molding other people's minds.
So you're getting your show on Chiller. Great.
Yeah. Just like Dr. Phil.
So one last thing is, in a couple minutes or less, I want you to give me your thoughts on a movie we recently reviewed, I think with Garen Cockrell, but maybe not, Motel Hell. Go.
Oh, man. Is that the one with Rory Calhoun in it?
Yes.
Yes. I have to be honest with you. It has been... It has to have been over 20 years since I've seen that movie. Is that the one? I'm trying to remember now. Is that the one where they bury the people up to their necks in the...
Yeah, and then they feed them as beef jerky.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. That literally, I think I told you the 2 things I remember about Motel Hell right there. So
all right, well, you should revisit that movie. It is horrible.
The last scene with the pig, the guy's wearing a pig head with a chainsaw. It's pretty intense. That's the best part of the movie is the last scene.
It took 14 days to film the last scene.
Yeah.
Wow.
The entire rest of the movie was filmed in like 8.
It's fun. I get that one mixed up sometimes with I forget what it was. Tobe Hooper did a movie right after Texas Chainsaw Massacre that was about a dude that fed women to his pet alligator, and I can't remember what it was called now. But they're very similar movies, like weird, dark, grindhouse, backwoodsy type movies. Yeah. I kind of get them mixed up. But,
well, I recommend revisiting Motel Hell, and also I recommend never watching it again. So you pick which one you want of those 2.
Right. Well, for the sake of ease, I'll probably go with the latter, but we'll see what happens. There are plenty of boring nights when.
Yeah.
Who knows what my next book is about? So.
Well, Chris, we can't thank you enough. It's always a joy to have you on. You're the man. I know behind every great man is a great woman. And one day I hope to see your wife's face. I'm sure.
She's right around that corner right there. She was politely locking herself in the room because I don't know if you can hear my voice, but hers is much worse. She's coughing like crazy. We got the, bubonic plague or whatever Zika virus is going around.
I had that plague about a month and a half ago. It's horrible.
Yeah.
And it does not go away easily.
Yeah, I'm all hopped up on codeine, but I said I'm going to be here no matter how high I am because the 80s podcast deserves it.
Yeah.
You know what? Hey, not only do we deserve it and we thank you, I have that philosophy every week. I'm like, Do I snort this cocaine? Because that's what the 80s deserves. That's not true. That's not true.
Or
at
do
all.
I go the other way with the 80s, which is to build an empire which will inevitably crash down around me in spectacular and violent fashion a la Scarface?
Well, I was thinking like a
or
Canon Films documentary we just watched.
exactly. I was just going to say the same thing. Or Canon Films, but that will be discussed by us in 3 weeks.
What is it?
So,
Electric Boogaloo?
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, we will be
It's gonna be a
discussing
fun
that soon.
conversation.
Real quick, our schedule is going to be crazy over the next few weeks, so let me break it down for you. Next week, if you do follow our website, you would think, hey, these guys are doing Fletch. We're not. That will be pushed back. Conrad Thompson of the Woo Nation Ric Flair podcast will be on to talk 80s wrestling in preparation for WrestleMania, which Michael and I will both be attending as our annual pilgrimage. So we will be releasing a bunch of audio only after that podcasts, just of our adventures and driving from Illinois to Dallas, Texas. We will be discussing just everything, or we're just going to be recording the whole way, different parts and points of the trip, and then we'll just be putting them out audio only. And then the week after that, we're going to be releasing a podcast that we actually appeared on another podcast. It's about it's about baseball, so we'll be releasing that. And then we'll be back in a few weeks to do Fletch as we return to our normally scheduled programs. But this is kind of our annual trip that we do to different parts of the country to watch our passion of wrestling. And so it kind of interferes with our schedule, but we try to incorporate the schedule as much as possible. We try to incorporate the podcast, so we will be doing so. Thank you for sticking by us. There's a dog barking outside of me, but it's very loud.
Okay.
Is the dog outside of you?
Outside of me, Ghostbuster style.
One time I turned into a dog and she helped me. Thank you.
But anyway, Mr. Vander Kaay, thank you so much. We love having you. We will not let a year go by this time. You are now responsible to come back in a couple months for Killer Clowns from Outer Space, whether you're hocking a book or not. We own you, is what I'm telling you.
Oh, I'm glad that everyone got to hear that. No, listen, I always have a great time on the show, and it sounds like we're finally picking a movie I'm definitely going to have a good time talking about.
Yes!
Well, I'll say this. I always have a good time talking about them. I'll have a good time watching it this time, too.
Okay.
All right. Well, you got House. I mean, House.
That's true. That's true. I can't complain about House.
Yeah. So, all right.
probably
Killer
did.
Clowns from Outer Space. It's in the books. I will get a hold of you here in a couple months. We'll book it. Michael, I hope you do this. Chris, I hope you do this. In fact, I hope you all do this. Stay awesome, everybody.
Stay awesome.